The 2024 NBA MVP race has been a wildly disputed one over the past couple of weeks. And in the eyes of most people, there are 5 players in contention for this award. I have set out to make a video on the case for each of these top 5 options. This is the third of those videos, the controversial case for a Luka Doncic MVP. Before we get started, this video is going to be a little different. I set some ground rules in the past video about how this is the case for and not against, but Luka's case requires some nuance, so here's what we'll be doing. We will start with the positive reasons for why he should win the MVP. Then we will go into the things that are holding him back. And finally, we will end with what has to happen over the final 20 games of the regular season for Luka to come out on top and win the MVP. It should be no news to you that Luka Doncic is putting on an offensive clinic this season, averaging 34.6 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 9.8 assists, all the while having a 57.7 effective field goal percentage, a 62.3% true shooting percentage, and shooting 78.5% from the free throw line. He's shooting a career high in three-point percentage and also has a career high in effective field goal, free throw, points per game, and assists. I don't think it's a stretch to say he is the most talented offensive player on the planet right now. Joel Embiid is close as a scorer, if not just as good, and Jokic is close, if not just as good as a playmaker, but Luka can do both almost better than anybody. Which got me thinking, how many times in NBA history has a player averaged 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists? The answer is none. If we take away rebounds, Tiny Archibald in 1973 did average 34 points per game and 11.4 assists. And if we knock down the criteria to 34, 6, and 6, James Harden achieved that feat twice in 2019 and 2020. If we were to knock down the points to 30 points per game and 8 rebounds and 8 assists, that's only been done 8 times in NBA history. Once by Russell Westbrook in 2017, his MVP season. Once by Michael Jordan in 1989, 4 times by Oscar Robertson throughout the 60s, and twice by Luka last season and this season. But if we then take their effective field goal percentages and true shooting and factor those into account, Luka tops that list of 8 in both of those categories. I really hope this is giving you a vibe for how special of a season Luka Doncic is having offensively. As a matter of fact, tonight he just made NBA history with his 6th straight game of 30 plus points and a triple-double. Previously, the old record was held by Russell Westbrook in 2017, and Luka against the Pistons tonight just broke that. But the Mavericks only went 3-3 in those 6 games. We'll get to the Mavericks' losing struggles in a second, but first I had to point out that ironically, 2 other MVP candidates are averaging 36 and 6 this season, Giannis and SGA. And those 2 are shooting a higher effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage than Luka. I only bring that up because this has been an incredibly special year for individual performances, making it all that tougher of a season to win the MVP. One massive bright spot from Luka this year is that he is absolutely destroying the short mid-range. Per Clean the Glass, the short mid-range is identified as shots from 4 feet from the basket to 14 feet. Luka is shooting 54% from that range, which is the best percentage for his position in the NBA. But what may be even more impressive is his percentage he's shooting at the rim. He's shooting 75% on 218 attempts, which is better than Nikola Jokic at 71%, better than SGA at 70%, better than Jason Tatum at 71%, with only Giannis having a better rim field goal percentage at 78%. And if we take a look at some all-in-one metrics, he is first in the entire NBA in offensive LeBron, first in the entire NBA in offensive EPM, and second in offensive DPM by Darko, which means he is truly having one of the greatest offensive seasons of all time. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is that not enough to win an MVP award? And there's 2 reasons really. Number 1, defense, and number 2, winning. Let's start with defense. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I am a Luka hater who thinks he is unplayable on the defensive end of the court. That's just not true if you're paying attention. However, he is pretty easily the worst defender of the 5 contenders for MVP, which in a race as close as this one can easily be the tiebreaker. So let's take a deeper look at Luka on the defensive end. Over the course of the whole season and in relation to his own team, Luka is the 4th worst defender in defensive rating. But since February 1st, we have seen improvement and he's moved himself to the middle of the pack. EPM has him at minus 0.4 defensive plus minus, which is good for a 54th percentile. LeBron has him at a minus 0.72 D LeBron, which is somewhere in the 20 to 30th percentile. And Darko has his defense ranked pretty poorly as well. After winning 7 straight games, including 5 after the deadline, and being ranked as the best defense in the NBA for that 7-game span, Dallas has since gone 2-5 and has legitimately had the worst defense in the NBA during that span. Now they did win tonight, which makes them 3-5, but we don't have the defensive rating yet for that game. 2 of those most recent losses have been going around Twitter with this new stat from Synergy that tracks defensive field goal percentage. In the Celtics loss, opponents scored 30 points on Luka with a 73.3% field goal percentage. And against the Pacers, 32 opponent points on 76.5% from the field. And these have been used to say there's no way he can win the MVP. He's the worst defender in the world. But on the season, he's averaging a 49.4% defended field goal percentage. So while he's been pretty awful on defense over the past couple games, he's been mediocre the course of the whole season, and we have to take those overall season numbers into account. I really don't think he's the walking liability on defense that everyone seems to say he is, but at the same time, he's not good. Like we said before, either way, he's the only true minus defender on this contender list, which means that if we are going to make a case for him to be the most valuable player, we have to prove that his offense is in a tier above every other player on this list. And also find someone in MVP history that is a good comp. So let's take a deeper look at Russell Westbrook in 2017. He averaged 31.6 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists. But he did so on 42.5% from the field and 47.6% effective field goal percentage. Luka is averaging 3 more points per game, 1.5 less boards, and 0.6 less assists. But his efficiency is way better than Russ's at 49.6% from the field and 57.7% from the field. The problem is Russ's MVP was controversial at the time, and Luka has to beat out the other candidates, not 2017 Russell Westbrook. So in my opinion, if you want to give the MVP award to a player like Luka, who's averaging 35, 9, and 9, instead of a player like Giannis, who's averaging 30, 11, and 6, or a player like Shea, who's averaging 31, 6, and 5, or even Jokic, the favorite, who's averaging 25.9, 12.3, and 9, with a better true shooting percentage and effective field goal, the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to make a run as a team. They cannot be sitting as the 7 or 8 seed and in the play-in. They can't even be the 6th seed. They would have to get to at least the 5th. But the reality is there's 18 games to go in the season and they're 2.5 games back from the 5. It's not just that they need to get the 5th seed, by the way. They need to win at least 48 or 49 games. To win 48, you have to go 12-6. To win 50, which is more ideal, you have to go 14-4. And in doing so, Luka has to be the reason, almost single-handedly, that they win these games. It's the only way he has a chance, and even so, it's probably still an outside shot. The Thunder and the Nuggets cannot overtake the Timberwolves for the 1 seed, and the Bucks have to stay behind the Cavs for 2nd in the East. Finishing hot will at least create some recency bias and show people that Luka can win with this roster, no matter how poorly you think it is. But the problem is, I just don't have enough faith in Jason Kidd to do so. Luka is having a historical offensive season, and to see him putting up these offensive numbers at 24 years old, that an MVP is coming his way at some point within his next 5 seasons. Get him a more competitive roster and we have a chance to see it, but either way, anyone saying Luka sucks just isn't paying attention in my opinion. He is not the problem. He has weaknesses, but his strengths greatly outweigh them. They just may not be enough to win the MVP this season in a year where the top 3 options seem to almost have bulletproof arguments. What do you think? Are we underselling how important Luka has been to this Dallas Mavericks team? Are we underselling his historic offensive season? Or is he overrated and just putting up empty stats that don't contribute to winning? If you enjoyed this video, check out the videos I just made on the overwhelming case for another Jokic MVP and the compelling case for an SGA MVP. Also be on the lookout for a Giannis video coming very soon. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see ya on the hardwood.